Former Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill served with many of the presidential hopefuls on stage, and she's now with us as an NBC News political analyst. Senator, good morning.
Good morning.
About last night, that's the theme of the morning. So what did you think about Vice President Biden? He came in as the front runner. Did you think it last night hurt him? He certainly took some shots.
Well, there's no question that it was not his best night. He had a solid performance, but Kamala, I mean, she brought it. I would put it in context, though. This was the opening curtain on a very long drama. And while I think Kamala is certainly assured that she's going to be in the final group of people on the stage debating come the end of this year, I think we can't assume that Joe Biden can't recover or that now it's a done deal for Kamala Harris.
Senator, here's the thing. There seems to be a different narrative emerging about Joe Biden. Everyone knows Barack Obama's number two. But also, here's a senator who has a complicated relationship with busing. He has this relationship with segregationists that he worked with while he was in the upper chamber. Do we think that last night moves the needle, or do you think that this is a narrative that is going to start to perhaps manifest itself in polling?
Well, if you look strategically at the votes in the Democratic primary, nothing is more important than the African-American vote. And frankly, the youth vote, that's where you see growth. So what happened last night? You saw some of the younger candidates go after Bernie to try to grab some of that youth vote. And you saw Kamala Harris go after Joe Biden, trying to reassure the African-American community, hey, I'm real. You guys need to get with this. I can be not only the second black president of the United States, but the first woman president of the United States.
The dynamic in the primary, whether it's a Republican primary or Democratic primary, is always things that happen in the primary may later come back and haunt in the general election. Did you see anything on the stage that concerned you as a Democrat on those grounds?
It'll be interesting to see how this plays out, because Kamala said after the debate that when she raised her hand to Lester Holt's question about private insurance, she thought he was referring to her own. He used the word their, and she thought he meant hers, and that she was not saying that all private insurance should be outlawed. That's going to be something here, because there's 150 million people in this country that have health insurance at work, and they're not as excited about giving that up.
Well, Senator Warren staked her claim on those grounds the night before.
Yes, and I think obviously that's going to be one of the big debates in this primary. Should we do away with all private insurance in this country and make it illegal, as Bernie and Elizabeth think we should do? Or should private insurance still be an option for those people who still want to provide insurance at work and get insurance at work?
Really quickly, who else do you think had a good night last night?
I think Mayor Pete had a pretty good night. Frankly, I think one of the reasons that Joe Biden didn't meet expectations was because all of the candidates were pretty damn good. I maybe shouldn't say that on morning TV. I apologize to all the parents out there. But they were all...
They're going to wash your mouth out with soap.
I'm going to see this glass as half full, as long as it doesn't get too personal. And if it does, the voters will react. I think what we saw over the last two nights is we've got a lot of strong candidates to take out the mess in the Oval Office.
Senator Claire McCaskill on the Democratic primary, thank you very much.
You
Appreciate
bet.
it.